Welcome to Corona Geek 185, Part 1. All right. So also joining us here, we've got Tony Godfrey from Shark Apps.
Hello.
We've got Stephen Johnson from Zabalba Studios, Ed Marina from RoamingGamer.com,
hey.
and we've got Mike Hempling from CraveCreative.com. So great. You guys, thanks for joining us. So Laura, First of all, people need to go to lauratedlarde.com. We'll put a link in the show notes. You can check out all her excellent work there. We're going to call you today. You are the Spine Ninja.
Excellent.
Okay. So tell us how this works. What your background is with Spine. What do you think of it? And then show us your magic.
Well, let's see. I started using Spine a couple years ago, like right after they finished the Kickstarter. I was like a post-Kickstarter member. And I was working with my partner, Scott Edelman, and we were doing a lot of really cool puzzle apps. And basically, I would make a static graphic and then send notes and tell Scott, rotate this around or, have this go across the screen. He did all of those animations, but then I was looking into this Spine and it ended up being so much faster. Like I just started playing around with it and the workflow is really, really fast once you get going. If you've worked with Flash, it's kind of similar to that, and I've used Flash in the past for animations. So it's really fast to get working with, and now we're able to just crank out the animations really, really fast. Which is, we produce puzzle apps, and each puzzle app has 12 puzzles and 12 animations. So we've really got it down to a well-oiled machine.
Now, as I understand it, as you were saying before, if you want to use a variety of graphics in your game, you have to create different versions of those. But with Spine, you're able to sort of create a skeleton and then programmatically move those around. Or have you used any of that?
Yeah, exactly. And like instead of having to draw different keyframes of a character in different poses, like if you need 9 different keyframes for like a jump or something like that, you would need all of those graphics. But if you have Spine, it's just like a little puppet or something. And each of the limbs is basically a separate graphic. And then so you tell Spine to just kind of make it jump. And it's able to do that and then just export the code. So you only ever need the graphics for the limbs. And then you can also do like a walk cycle or like a shooting or, whatever other kind of animations that you want to do from the same set of limbs. So they can be reused a lot and it goes pretty fast.
Okay. Okay. Well, I don't know. I have a ton of questions. I guess I could, I want everybody on the panel to have a chance to ask questions. So do you have a demo for us?
Yeah. Let's see. Let me try and share my screen up.
Okay.
Let's see here. Is that working? Do you guys see?
Yes.
A giant floating kitty?
Yes.
Okay, good. Sky. So this is the little demo graphic that I came up with for the demo today. It's Corona Geek Girl.
Nice.
And so as you can see here in the layers over here, I've got everything kind of separated out into different layers. So there's the head and the body, and then if you open up the body, there's arms, there's legs, and everything, basically every single thing that I want to be articulated is on a separate layer. So like I can turn these off and like just be able to export like the head or like whatever limb that you want to do. So basically you set up your file in this way such that all the limbs are on different layers. And then you go through and you kind of export them all into the different files. And it takes a little while, but let's see, let me try and get up how it looks like when it's all finished. Once you have all the finished images, they're just going to look like kind of disembodied limbs, basically. Every single little articulated file or articulated piece that you have is going to be a different file. So these are just the arms, the legs, this is the mouth, the torso. So you get all of these little files and they're all separated. And then, so that's how you can, I'm sorry?
Quick question about these individual
Yes.
images. So when you work in this and you're creating this, do you typically do you start these at like twice their size, 4 times their size? So keeping in mind that in the end you're going to, and when you export, you give this ability to export at different, sizes, or you want to create it at what you think is going to be 100% of the size it's going to be utilized?
Yeah, generally you want to create it for the largest size that it's going to be, like whatever 4x Retina graphics that you use, and then you can scale it down from there later.
Okay.
But if you use a smaller one and then scale it up, it won't look as nice as if you take a larger one and then scale it down.
Okay, so definitely start with the large one and then go from there.
And if you're working with vector graphics, that's not really as much of a concern because you can scale them up and down without any loss of quality, but I'm working with bitmaps. So with that, you always want to start with the largest and then go down. Okay, so once you have all of these files, you get Spine up and running here. And this is kind of the main Spine workflow page. Right here is the main animation area. Down here are your controls, and over here is kind of all your files that you're going to be working with. So I have a completed file that I'm going to show you, but I'm going to show you first kind of how to get it set up and running. So you just start a new project, and then you come over here to the images in the menu, and you point this to wherever your images are on your computer. Your big folder of limbs. Kind of gross, I guess. But okay, so here's my big folder of images, and then it displays all of the limbs that are down here. And I've labeled them all so that they're all, identifiable. And it gives you a little preview. And so in addition to the limbs, you also want to export a graphic of what it looks like all together, because we're going to piece it together, so we have to know what it looks like when it's done, so it's not all disjointed and weird. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to create the skeleton in Spine and then start pinning the limbs to the skeleton, which again sounds weird, but that's just how it is. So you select the graphic, and then you come down here and you set the parent, and then there's a little root down here, a little root bone that we can attach it to, and then it shows up. And I'm going to get it up to the line there. Oh, and down here, there's the option to display or not display bones. So I'll turn those on, and also the same for images as you're working with them. And then once you get this in, it's the tutorial that I used said to go ahead and change the tint of it, and then also knock down the opacity, because we're going to be matching up the graphics, so we want it to be a little bit different so we can tell what's going on. So the next step is to create the skeleton. We come over here to this tools thing, tools bar, and we click on create. And then you start at the root, because this is the root for the whole animation that's going to be happening. And then I usually create, sometimes I have an animation with several puppets, so I'll create like a root for just this one puppet. And then you just kind of start tracing it. Like here's the spine. That's a little spine pun we use. And then here's the head bone. And then you just kind of go through and you map out all of the way that the skeleton would look. So I'm just tracing out the arms and out from the chest. And basically you click on the one that you want it to kind of map to. And everything that you draw after that is continuous. So basically the way that I just drew these 3 skeleton lines out, the upper arm is going to be connected to the torso. And then we click on that, and then we'll draw the lower arm, which is connected to the upper arm. And then we draw this out, and then the hand is connected to the lower arm. You all with me so far? Okay. So basically,
we're waiting for you to connect the knee bone to something.
Right.
Exactly.
We're all still done with it.
So you basically just go through and kind of create the whole skeleton here and you want 1 bone for each of your articulated parts. So I'm starting these off the hip bones, and I'm just doing quick legs here. And then, so this is pretty much what your skeleton looks like when it's finished. So after that, we want to start kind of pinning the little graphics. And you generally want to work from the top down. So do anything that's, like, for example, this hand is going to be covered up by the torso, so we'll pin the hand first. So you click on that bone and then come over here to your list of files. And now we're searching for the left hand. So you select that and then click on Set Parent, just like you pinned the first graphic. And then you click on the bone and click OK. And then it gives you your little hand. And so you move it up so it's adjusted and everything fits correctly. And you just basically go through and do this for the entire doll until it's all finished. It's a little bit of busy work, but this is just the way it's done. And it's kind of soothing to just put it up.
And so the reason you said to work sort of like you said top down or whatever is just because of the ordering, the order in which the graphics will appear on top of each other.
Exactly. You'll be able to change it, but for now, for example, here I'll pin the torso, and as soon as this is pinned, it's going to it's going to cover up the hand. So you can see if we wanted to now pin the hand, it would be difficult because we don't have that guide layer anymore. And you can turn these off. I mean, this isn't an ironclad rule. You can turn it off and then pin it and turn it back on. This is the little visibility or toggle over here. So that's pretty much how you do all the pinning. And I have one all pinned up here. I'm just gonna shortcut through this and open up this one that's fully pinned and only a little broken. There we go. So now you can see everything is all pinned up. All of the limbs are on the skeleton, and everything matches up correctly. So that's step, I guess, 2, is to get the skeleton pinned. And then once you're happy with the way that looks, you want to change it and start the animations. So you come over up into the upper left-hand corner where it says Setup, and click on that, and it changes to Animate. And you get this awesome dope sheet down here. And this is basically the timeline for your animations. If you've worked with Flash, it's going to look really, really familiar. But this is just basically the number of frames that you want to have. And you work with it from there. So I can, let's see, I'll start a new animation to kind of show you how it's done. Usually when I'm working with puzzles, 9 times out of 10, 12 times out of 12 really, it's on a loop. So the way that you kind of do a looped animation, I figure I'd show you guys how to do that, is you select all of the bones to start off with. You also want to click Auto Key, and that will automatically remember the keyframes as you're pressing these buttons. Otherwise, it'll forget and you'll lose all your work. So you make sure Auto Key is active, and then you want to press these 2 keys over here, and this creates a keyframe. You can see down in the dope sheet that these 2 keyframes were just created for all of these bones now. So we're going to take the very first keyframe here is basically all of the bones. So we're going to take that and go to this little icon here, which is copy. I've found that generally 60 frames is a pretty good loop. So I'm going to go out to the 60 frame loop and then paste. And so we basically all we have now is a keyframe at 0 and at 60 saying, this is what I want it to look like. So this is it playing, it's not really doing anything. But once we want to start doing the animation, we'll go to the, basically same as the stacking, I kind of like to work top down. Well, I guess kind of opposite. But basically you want to try and get the larger animations done first and then go down into the smaller tweaks. So if I wanted to have her kind of rocking back and forth and waving, you select the bone, and then you can, if you get the little circle, that's the rotate, you can rotate it back and forth. Or you can right-click on your mouse, and that'll give you the left and right button to just move it around. And I goofed that, she shouldn't be doing that. And so basically, once you start moving it around, it'll remember what you were doing. And then if you play it, it'll start reflecting your animation, even though this is goofy. Hold on. Let me fix the translate. Okay. Stop with your torso movements. Okay, so we can see now that it's just moving back and forth. We could also bring it over to frame 45, and at frame 45, she kind of waves. And then so we can set it to go, and she'll do that. And so it just takes kind of a lot of tweaking from here to just keep going with the frames and changing the limbs and seeing the timing and how you like it and watching the loops. And once you get the animation how you like it, I've prepared a much better animation for us to watch. You can do little walk cycles of the little dolls. And then here's her just waving in a normal way.
And I just want to point out the finer detail here is that on the one where she's waving, it looks like her hair was moving as well.
Yes, that's actually a trick that I do. Usually in the Photoshop file, let me try and get it up here. I'll have just the head. You can see the head here, and then the hair is on a separate layer.
Nice.
It's a little messy. But basically, all the girls' hair is on a like the ponytails and stuff will wave a little bit separately. And I studied animation in school, so I get a little persnickety about little small things like that.
Well, yeah, those things make the difference, right? They're the pieces that most people can't verbalize, but they say, oh, they see it and they recognize it.
Absolutely. Like there's like a really cool list. I'll send it for the show notes or whatever, but there's a really cool list from like the Disney animators, like the guys who came up with like Cinderella and Snow White and like the very classic Disney animation. They put out like a set of 10 rules to follow for realistic looking animation. And I would love to share them with you guys because they're really fun, but I don't have them on me and I don't want to Google them right now, but I'll send them to you.
Well, it's interesting since you mentioned the Disney list there, I was noticing that you went 60 frames out and you came back halfway and went to 30. And then I can see that, that you're doing your in-between. So there's all these keyframes, like say from 0 to 60, but then when you come halfway, is that what they call doing your in-betweens? It seems like there's like a rule of halves or something like that.
Yeah, well, basically, I'm sorry?
I was going to say it's called tweening, the in-between frames that the computer is calculating between.
Yeah, but tweening is such it seems like such a geek term, like you're like Flash always talked about, tweening and things like that. And it always seemed like I really didn't, I got it conceptually, but I really didn't get why I was doing it. But it seems like I've watched some animators talk about working in halves, doing the in-betweens. So getting the major keyframes, like Laura was saying before, the beginning and the end and then the middle, and then from there working off the in-betweens to flesh out more and more and to refine more and more. So that's to me that just makes more sense to talk about it in terms of like working in halves or working in betweens as opposed to the more geeky sounding tweening.
Absolutely. Definitely. And one of the advantages also to working in 60 frames is like if you want to have these loops, you can cut it down to 30 and then down to 15 from there. And then also if you want something to kind of be going on the offbeat, you can also divide it up into like 0, 20, 40, 60. So there's several different ways to kind of run concurrent loops and have it look a little bit different, but everything's still looping evenly. So I like 60 for a number. But all of, a lot of this is also just kind of getting really deep into it and just really working on it far past when I should. I should really just have them out there and be done with it, but I just get caught up doing some of these smaller things.
So once you've spent the hours
exactly.
doing the refining pieces, what comes after that?
So after that, you once you're happy with everything, you go up into your little spine toolbar and you export your data. Oh, can you see my little screen right now? Is that still being shared?
Yes.
Okay, good. And you output it wherever you want to, and you want to make sure you're exporting the JSON data. You can also export an animated GIF if you just want an animated GIF of the graphic, which is fun. Like I use that for websites and stuff. But anyway, so you want the JSON data, and then you go ahead and export it. And once you have that, let's see here. You want to kind of set up all of your files for the app. And this is, oh, where'd it go? Sorry. Here we go. All right, so basically it exports this skeleton JSON file. And the files that you're going to need to make this run is Spine Corona and Spine.lua. These are just library files from Spine that make it work. You're also going to need the JSON file, which is the file with all the animations and stuff that we just exported. And then you'll need yet another file, and this is a Lua file that kind of tells Corona what to do with the Spine file and how to interpret it. And then finally, there's just the regular main the main code where you drop it in. So let me try and here we go. Let me open up my the code here up in Sublime, and so you can see this is the file that it exports. You know, just a big long JSON file. This is the file that kind of deals with bringing the Spine file into Corona and into Lua. And then this is the main file where you just, really this is pretty much it, how you drop it in. It's just requiring in the skeleton and starting it up and positioning it. And I've done definitely most of my work just kind of on the animation side. Most of the time I'm tossing them off to Scott to work on. I worked with the Corona code, or with the Spine code a little bit in Corona, but I'm by no means an expert, so I can hopefully answer questions, but
okay.
Can't really
Could you open that up in Corona? Yeah, let's just see it run. That would be the.
Get this going here. Simple app. And there we go. And so there she is.
Very nice.
Yep. And so you can, oh, thank you very much. And so from the code, you can change through the different animations. Like you can go through the waving and the walking and whatnot. And I would demo for that for you now, but I ran into a bunch of bugs and I couldn't figure it out for today. So it is easily possible. I just ran into a few issues.
So basically, I think what I hear you saying there is basically you can set up a set of preset animation that you can call on, just like if you were to have a bunch of sprite. That's like a sprite sheet with a bunch of different images.
Exactly. So like I could have a button down here, and it would say like change animation, and I could press it, and then she would swap the animation.
Okay.
And you can do that all very easily within Corona.
So, but I guess I just, as I was saying that, I was realizing, you didn't create a sprite sheet. You didn't work with any other tools or anything.
No, it was just this big file full of all of these images, and that JSON file, and that's pretty much just what you come up with.
Okay. And I know you guys did the Dancing Cat, the Disco Cat app with that. What other ones have you used this for?
Oh, all of the puzzles, which are like 12 or 13 puzzles now. It's like, or 9 or 10. It's a lot of puzzles. Wow. And then I think that might be it. I definitely have it in a couple other projects, but those are all still being worked on in progress. And then I think I have one other app, but it's just like a dog's tail waving. And I was just like, I'm not freaking out the Spine for that.
Yeah, it's probably a break-even point where you're like, it's a little more overhead than I need.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if it's something like, just a character blinking while they're staying still, then it's, maybe just worth it to put in a little timer. But if you're doing something like this, like you can see she's doing the walking, she's waving, she's got like eyes blinking and whatnot, so it's good for more complex animations.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was one other thing that I wanted to mention is you can also pin multiple limbs to a bone. So for example, there is an eye bone, and she's got 2 sets of eyes pinned to it, like a regular open eye and a closed eye. So there's a part in the animation where it says, all right, make the closed eye visible and make the open eye invisible. And then, vice versa. And so that's her little blink that she does.
Now, and we may have to get Scott on for this. You may have not done this, but I kind of, one of the things that I'm really interested in is this idea of being able to programmatically control the character. So you mentioned having sort of these preset animations, and that makes sense. But it still seems like to me, my desire or my understanding of it is that you could still, in code, control the character. Just by the sheer fact that these are all just images pinned to a skeleton, and then you could still move that around in some way if you. I don't know. That's where my understanding sort of just drops right off the edge.
Well, you basically you have the doll as like a display object, and you can move it around just like a regular display object. And then at certain points, you can just tell it to change out, instead of the walk animation, stop doing that and do the jump animation. And then when it's done jumping, go back to the walk animation. So you basically tell it to change between animation states.
Well, yeah. So right now, like her right leg comes up and extends and then goes back, right? So I guess an example of what I'm trying to describe is that in the preset animation, it does this over and over again, but then programmatically, can you go in and make that right leg rise higher than was originally set in the preset animation?
Oh, like you could definitely change the JSON file, the export, but I don't know if I want to.
Yeah, I just don't know if it.
Yeah, you can get, so each one of those pieces inside the spine file have what they call a slot attached to it, which is kind of like a bone. And you can search through the table, because all it is a table, and you can get that bone and you can move that bone independently. The full-on IK support's not there, so like if I move a bone, I'm just moving that bone or rotating that bone. I'm not dragging the rest of the arm with me. But it's really good for like if you want to have a character holding different weapons, or you want to have a character throwing a ball and you want the ball to exit the skeleton and become a physics object and bounce around, like all that kind of stuff you can do just by going through it's kind of traversing the spine object like it's a display group and assigning kind of properties and values to it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. There you go. That's what I was looking for, because that seems like that's really. I mean, this is great. I think this is.
I have a question.
Like step one, and then from there, being able to programmatically manipulate it seems like a really power piece. What's up, Sergey? How you doing?
Yeah, great, fine, thanks. Are there any means in Spine to introduce some randomization? So, maybe you have 3 kinds of animation, and Spine randomly chooses one animation to play at each time, or some randomization of some values, or maybe the leg goes up or a little bit lower, something like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's, just like Laura said, you can assign, just like people do round robin for their sound effects. So I might have 5, gunshot sound effects and kind of randomly pick one. You could have 5 recoil animations on your character and have those randomly play. The really cool thing that Spine does is, when you load a Spine file, you can actually pick the mix time between different animations. So like I can say the mix time between a run and a walk is a half a second, and the character will actually smoothly come out of their run no matter what frame of the run they're in. You can imagine it almost as kind of a transition library. So it's transitioning to the last frame or from the last frame of the run to the first frame of the idle or the walk. So when you start putting in kind of random animations, you get, just this infinite amount of in-between stuff that can happen because you're moving from one animation to the other. it's really cool. I mean, you see, yeah, I don't know. A couple of the games that we've done recently with Spine, you'll notice like just tapping the key, like to move the character forward just a little bit doesn't cause them to go into a full run. They just start to go into their run. And since you let it go, they just ease back into their idle animation. And that whole thing isn't programmed or anything. It's just kind of the effect of not making it into the full run cycle and then easing back into the idle cycle.
That's cool. Another question, is there some locks for objects? For example, if I, or in this current example, want to make the head not to tilt left and right, and just so it goes up and down without tilting, can I lock the angle of an object while it's being animated in a group?
Yeah, I don't think that's built in, but you could certainly find that bone attached to the head and keep the angle that it is at that point, and then re-add that to every keyframe. I mean, we wrote a spine wrapper to make this kind of easier to program, where we attach an enter frame to each spine you load in, so that way you're not kind of calling that in a singular loop, like each one has their own. And we can kind of control, all the spines individually. And we'll do things like if a spine animation goes off screen, we'll turn its inner frame off. So that way it's not constantly animating when you can't see it. And then we'll turn it back on when it comes on screen. So it's kind of like we're locking all the bones, but you could go in and lock, just a certain amount of bones.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
So are you also able to make any of these, like this character, could you make this character physics-based? Add physics characteristic to it? Or is it not possible?
There's another spine wrapper floating around there that Hector, I don't remember his last name off the top of my head.
The helper module?
Yeah, spine helper. And it has a really cool function where you can just turn your spine object into a ragdoll, and at the point of, whenever you need it to kind of fall over, and it just kind of randomly specifically creates all the joints where the spine bones are, and then just turns it over to the physics engine, and the thing just kind of collapses. It wasn't really something that we were looking at, so we didn't implement that kind of stuff. But yeah, the spine helper it's free and it's pretty cool.
What I was kind of talking about was more of that she's walking here, she's doing something, and that every part of her is a physics object, but she's still just doing what she's doing, and then you could have another object like a ball that comes and bounces off of her, or she interacts with another physics object type of a thing.
You could add a whole body to her group. But
yeah, that's what we do, is we put a kind of a pill-shaped body around our objects, so it kind of looks right. But I mean, you could go in and make all the arms kinematic bodies and still move them and still get kind of a perfect collision. But only if I'd only do it with a character like this big on screen. I wouldn't do it with a tiny little character running around.
it also sounds like you're alluding, Mike, to inverse kinematics, which is not exactly. I mean, anything's doable, but as Wilson said, you can. Is it Wilson? Is that your last name or your first name?
That's my last name, but most everybody calls me Wilson because my first name's Mike, and there's always at least two Mikes in the meeting, right, Mike?
I'm assuming you can probably figure out a way to do ICO with this inverse kinematics animation, but out of the box, it's not straightforward. Also, I just wanted to point out, don't forget the runtime source code's available. So I don't think we said that earlier, but for people listening, that means that you can get the code that loads the spine animations and does all the work is available. You can always dig in and add your own code to that, modify it, do whatever you need.
Yeah, and they have a couple sample spines as well you can download. But our last two Ludum Dare entries, especially on the Windows side, you can just download them, and the resources directory in the zip has the spines that we used in our game. You can feel free to play around with those as well.
So, Laura, I have a couple of questions for you just on the art side of this. One, what version of Photoshop are you using?
Let's see, CC, Creative Suites.
Okay,
I'm on the subscription one.
Like the Creative Cloud?
Yeah, the one where I just give them all the money and they just give me Photoshop.
Just take my money. Take my money.
That's the one I like. Give me all your money.
Okay. I asked, that was just sort of a curiosity question because I know it seems like most people are kind of split these days as to whether or not they are just going to continue to use their old Photoshop version or if they're going to use the Creative Cloud.
No, I ran into that issue a lot as Photoshop, didn't have the subscription service before for a long time, and it was kind of always a ticking time bomb of when is Photoshop just not going to work when is Photoshop 4 finally going to crash on you, and when do you have to pony up that $3,000 or however much it is for a new one? So it's a little bit of a relief just to give them a little bit of money every month and know that it's always going to work and whatever.
Yeah. And do you use Photoshop because that's what you're familiar with, or because that's what your clients use, or just because that's what everybody else uses?
It's pretty kind of all three. I worked a lot with in the illustration field for apps, and Photoshop is definitely the main software, all the Adobe suite software, and also it just works really well with the layers. I've worked with a couple other pieces of art software here and there. Some of it's fun and interesting to create with, but it's just as far as, being able to export and whatever you need and create really whatever you want, Photoshop has always been the gold standard.
Okay. Yeah. It seems like there's a lot of options out there these days, and it's hard to know, which one you should go with, especially when someone is trying to maybe do something on a zero budget. Yeah.
I definitely, I hate seeing that Photoshop line coming up on my credit card every year or every month. But, it was just at one point I was like, it's a professional expense. I don't want to have to deal with, the free software. I've been using Photoshop forever.
Okay.
Photoshop is really a gold standard for such things. But if somebody is on a budget, there are tools like Pixelmators, Acorn, I think, or something like this, which are really good, but unfortunately there's nothing like that on Windows. So Windows guys still need Photoshop.
Is GIMP still around?
GIMP is not so good for production values. So
have you looked at?
I do like open source, but I cannot recommend GIMP for real usage.
Sergey, have you looked at Krita? Krita?
Yes, I think, but they are different from Photoshop, I think.
Yeah, well, I'm sure. I'm sure there's differences, but it's just in terms of a tool. It seems very, very together. Very feature complete. So.
Not to get too far out, but don't forget there's Inkscape too for Windows and I think OS 10.
Yeah.
There's also, I don't know if they're still doing it, but you used to be able to get like a 30-day free trial of Photoshop. And then I think they have like a free month or whatever. And then they have a lot of educational discounts if you teach or if you're a student. You can get a lot of discounts that way.
Yeah. Krita runs on Windows. Yes, right. Thanks, Charles. One year out.
Yeah. See if that works for you. I also know that they're using Photoshop, Quickshare, which works with Corona.
Yes.
Works in layers in Photoshop, and then you can export your layers out into your project. And then I haven't used Quickshare in a long time, but basically use Corona and your exported images to create storybooks and games and things like that. So, using Photoshop has its benefits, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So my other question is more geared towards the when you're creating your limbs, you're creating all the sections of your limbs, even your torso, your head, whatever, all your different body parts. Is there any tip or secret that you would share on how to make sure that things overlap properly, so that when you flex them, they don't show gaps, or they seem natural?
Absolutely. Usually I try and, here, let me try and share the screen again. There we go. Usually I try and have everything kind of rounded off. So if you can see here in the legs, sorry, there's so many files. There's so many layers in here. So you can see in the legs, like this is rounded off. Really, this one should be rounded off. I was just kind of going quickly. Basically, if you have everything rounded off like that, then it doesn't really appear so much. And you can have things go really far at a very extreme angle. If they're, and if they're rounded, you don't get that kind of edge that you do if you have, a more tight fitting limb.
Okay. So anything that's overlapping, rounding is your friend.
Yes, absolutely. I think, and I've done it kind of this way here. If it's a more complex animation, I'll make sure every single little thing is rounded. But like if I'm moving fast and I know only a couple things are going to be animated, I'll just, kind of leave them like this. But like you can see, this one's nicely rounded. Okay. Really, they should be.
And then beyond that, I guess it's just a matter of one-off tweaking, right? Once you put the skeleton together and you run the animation, you're like, oh, I see a gap there. You just kind of have to go back in and fix it.
Yeah, and like sometimes I'll do things like if there's like a wrinkle in the fabric, like a knee or the elbow joints or something, I'll kind of have that included in the limb, so it'll come down and then have the bump and then be rounded off. But basically, the most important thing is to really plan out what you want the animation to look like, and create the art with that in mind, so that you're not going back later and tweaking things that you don't really have to. That you should have.
Which I suppose you're creating all these things in Photoshop, all layered up. I assume you just take and you could just sort of pivot different pieces of the image in Photoshop and say, this is going to go over here, and maybe this, and you kind of get yourself an idea of it before you actually go to spine.
Yeah, you can let's see here. I can kind of combine these together and then bring this up and kind of rotate this around so you can see, kind of how it would look in spine.
Just change the anchor point in Photoshop, yeah.
Yeah, you just change that little middle thing there. Otherwise, it just spins around like that.
Yeah. It's a totally different animation altogether.
Yeah, getting bugs in spine is the best, because sometimes if things go wacky, they go really wacky.
Yeah.
There's stuff flying everywhere.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions on the panel for Laura on this piece?
I do. I have a question for Laura and then the panel in general for anybody who knows. I used Spine a long time ago on that Turkey Trouble app. I used it and then we took it out. And the reason we took it out was because we used it on all the little chicks, which it was a match 3 game. And there were dozens of these things on the screen. And at the end of the day, our performance tanked on certain devices. And so my question is to you, Laura, and to the panel at large, is how do we feel about the performance today? I mean, what's our benchmark as far as like how many spine modules and how many arms and limbs and things? Do you have like a general reference?
I haven't really come up against a limit. I've had a couple really complex animations with up to 4 or 5 characters, and they're all fully articulated and moving around. But that's like 4 or 5, not like a screen full of chicks. Yeah,
this was like 30, so that got to be a little too much.
Oh, okay. That might be the limit.
But I think what I was getting at here is I think that the performance is significantly improved since the original runtime, because that was like 2 years ago.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
At the end of the day, aren't these just animations that are playing in Corona? It seems like we're able to do a pretty high limit of a number of those.
Yeah, it's the math. So all of the robots in NBA Escape are done with spine, and we actually do a test. We have a little legacy devices module. So if you're on an iPhone 4 or you're on an early iPod Touch, we actually turn off all the spine animation. And just kind of as a global thing. If you're on a low DPI Android device, we do it as well. So there is this kind of, an easy way of, kind of controlling that. And in fact, I think even what we do is we let like the first animation play, and then it just goes to a static object, and then it's no different than just a display group of those little bones. We played around with doing lookup tables for the sine and cosine table as well. That had a slight performance increase, but had a lot of headache associated with it. Although we did kind of keep that for making some things very robotic, so making joints look like they snap into place, even though the rest of the animation is kind of playing smoothly. So we're using some of that stuff. But yeah, I mean, if you do 30, 40 things on screen, you're going to run into issues.
On a mobile device.
Yeah. On a PC, it's, I don't know. I mean,
Much
even
higher.
low PCs, it can get a little rough and tumble.
I don't think Spine introduces much overhead to what Corona actually has, right? So if you have 30 chickens running on the screen in pure Corona, it should also slow down if it's Spine or not.
Well, you got to think what Spine's doing in their runtimes is basically their own tweening engine, tweening every bone and every spine that you have going on screen. So, it's a lot of just Lua computation. It's not necessarily a graphics thing. Like you can do a great big spine. One great big spine is fine. A bunch of little spines can be problematic. But again, one of the things that we try to do is when a spine's off screen, we don't play its animation, and you get a big performance increase for that. You can also do, you can control the frame rate of the spine animation. So, that inner frame gets called every time. You can just put a quick little if then on a module to have it only play every other frame or only animate every other frame, or every third frame or every fourth frame, which gives it much more of a still-like look, but it's certainly performance-wise. And then the end-all be-all is just to move Corona down to 30 frames a second, so that helps all the performance, plus the spine's only animating 30 times a second rather than 60.
There's one more minor question. I know we kind of talked about this earlier, and bear in mind that the last time that I used Spine was about 6 months ago. But at the time I was looking at Spine again 6 months ago, one of the features I noticed that I found intriguing was the ability to create touchable, I don't even know the right way to refer to it now, like masks or sections of the body. So you can give different sections of the body, you could apply different touch listeners to different parts of the body, so that you could, in a sense, get a more interactive character. So, for example, let's say somebody clicked on the head, you might do a response or an action for the head click versus the torso or the arm. You know what I'm talking about, and have you used that feature?
No, but it sounds really cool.
All right, then. Well, that was an easy answer.
No, actually, well, I feel bad because Spine is actually, they have so many different options. I got started with it right after Kickstarter. I watched the one tutorial video, which is basically kind of what I showed you today. And then I was like, all right, this is good for me forever. And they've added all these new features that I'm like, yeah, that would be awesome. I'll learn that one day.
Right. The thing is, I think I noticed was when I went to look at it again 6 months ago versus when I first picked it up after the Kickstarter, is like they changed all their examples and a lot of their documentation changed. I'm like, I don't remember that feature being in there before.
Oh.
So for your case, because you've been using it, it's like you don't go back to the how do I use it for the first time demo, which then adds a whole bunch of new features you never saw before.
Yeah, I should go back now. I should see what they're doing.
Yeah, so,
I
anyways.
don't know. I've been running the same version that I got since that old Kickstarter, so I should probably update it too.
Well,
You haven't updated the like when because they push updates automatically, right? And then you can just choose to like update or whatnot. But so you're still running the Kickstarter version?
It's like the right post Kickstarter version. So like if you go into it, it might look a little different from this video.
Oh, cool.
So, and it'll have new features.
Yeah. Well, and I'll link to their how-to videos because they do a great job of going into detail, right? I mean, you gave us the workflow edition, and they go into the and this little icon here is where does this little special thing here,
Yeah, you can do I mean, like I really just scratched the surface of what you can do, the very basic stuff, but you can do like a lot of really crazy things with it. And I really, really highly recommend the videos. They're really easy to listen to and very informative and long and comprehensive.
Yeah,
that's the best thing for me as a non-artist is that it's just really accessible. Never had any artistic training, and yet even I could make a pseudo-articulated little guy that looks like he might actually be able to walk, or because I've tried doing animations traditional style where you do like the sprite sheets. Forget about it. I can't do that.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
And that's an important point too, is that there's frame by frame, hand-drawn frame by frame animation, and then there are tweening or in between or this style of animation, and this has become very popular because people can do it with tools. They can do it really quickly, and they don't have to do all the hand-drawn in-betweens. And so, I agree, Ed. I agree. It seems very approachable, and there are tools out there that do that you can do animation with. But I have not found a better one for doing game development. They definitely filled a need in the market for sure. Well, okay, all right. Well, thank you, Laura. I appreciate it. That's perfect.
Let's take one last note.
Yeah, what's that?
My mom. She might be watching.
You rock, Mom. That's right.
No, I'm sorry.
Well, okay. We have so that what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna publish that out as a show. It's gonna be all about Spine. I'll put links in the show notes, and that will be that. If you guys have time to hang on, and Michael, if you have time to hang on, I'd love to talk about the Mimic and the things that you've done with Ludum Dare and how you are able to crank out your apps using the framework that you've built. So there you go. You guys check the show links for that. I'm going to shop this off here, and we'll be back here in 2 weeks to do Corona Geek 186. And then if you are interested, and I highly recommend that you do, go and find the next video, which is going to be a session with Michael and hopefully everybody who hangs out here as well.